Good afternoon. Welcome to the afternoon work session of BOCC. Today, we're doing general fund, just the whole budget recap, right?
Yes, primarily, we'll discuss general fund, but we'll discuss anything else that you want to
Okay.
discuss.
Okay.
I wanted to kind of recap, and I'm looking at I wanted to give you an idea of 2022 budget. And so just walk you through where we're at today. 2022 actual budget without a beginning or ending fund balance had revenue estimate. This is actual. I'm sorry, it wasn't the budget, it was actuals. It was a revenue of almost $59 million. And expenses came in that year at $56 million. So there was an actual contribution to fund balance of a little over $2 million that year. But I wanted to note that when we started out the original budget for 2022, that they actually had reported a use of fund balance of approximately $13 million. So quite a significant swing from what was budgeted to actuals. So I want you to keep that in mind as we're going through this. So for 2023, our current year.
Just a question on that.
Yes. I'm sorry.
Excuse me. I didn't think we had 13 million in fund balance at the time. We did?
You budgeted, yes. You had in your budget in excess of 13 million, yes. So for 2023, you have a balanced budget, as we always present a balanced budget, which includes both beginning fund balance and ending fund balance. And that was $77 million for both revenue and expenses. Then I wanted to show you the fund balance I wanted to show you the budget without fund balances, so you have a more accurate picture. And so the budget for 23 started out with almost $55 million of revenue and almost 70 million worth of budgeted expenses. And if that budget would basically say that we'd be utilizing $15 million of fund balance. Just for your purposes, the budget for 2023 was forecasting a beginning fund balance of 22 million. And that was very close to what our fund balance was once we ended 22. So the use of fund balance still allowed us to have an ending fund balance budgeted of over 7 million. And the target, according to our policy, is the 8.3% of expenditures. And so that would have been a target of $5.8 million. And so we budgeted well above our target, even using fund balance. So then for the 24 budget, we're going to, these are still estimates. I'm still working on refining everything and looking at every line. But right now we're sitting at a $76 million revenue budget and a $76 million expenditure budget that includes beginning and ending fund balances. So what I'm projecting without fund balances, I wanted you to see this, is a little over $59 million of revenue. And this is taking into account really looking at our revenues a little bit more closely than we probably did last year when we budgeted them. You'll notice that 2002 actual revenues were 59 million. So now we're closer to that, getting closer to what we actually achieved in 2022. And we have several areas where we have a little bit less revenue coming in because, for example, the defeasance of those bonds, that the money's coming in from, I forgot which entity, it's for Three Rivers. Correct. Thank you. For Three Rivers. So that's no longer coming in as a transfer or revenue in. So that took our revenue down a little bit, but we've looked at these revenues and I've looked, the majority of the revenues relate to our property taxes and also our interest income and our sales taxes. And so I feel that we're still being conservative, but not overly conservative on projecting revenues for 2024. The expenses are the expenses that include all of our expenses for example, the sheriff's office. You already have a collective bargaining that was signed in an agreement, so it includes all of their increases that were part of that collective bargaining agreement. I've also included a set aside for COLAs for exempt and non-represented employees. We also have included all the expenses that the various departments went over with you in their workshops. So those are included in this budget. I think all of the technology requests were included in most people's budgets. I don't see Marin. I'm not sure Marin's was, but most of those were included in their individual budgets as well. This budget includes all of the mental health, all the behavioral health, tax, income as well as expenses. That was another thing on the income. The income doesn't have the full year of the behavioral health tax coming in as well. So that is that. Utilizing what I have now, the estimates, that would show that we would have a use of fund balance of a little over $11 million. I'm not projecting as high of an ending fund balance for 2023 as we did in the 2023 budget. So that brings that estimate says that I'd be about $5 million for the fund balance. And that's a little bit shy of our 8.3%. But again, like I said, I haven't gone through and made sure they've got everything and that I haven't double counted anything, things like that. So I still need to do a quality review of everything. So that's my only concern at this point, is that we would be showing a budget potentially that would not meet our requirement, our fund balance requirement. And I don't want to do that. So I'm going to go back and look at some things and see if there's anything I can recommend changing.
So Kathy, for your 2024 budget, are you assuming the mental health tax disappears? I can't remember what we asked you to
No.
prepare.
No, you gave me instructions that right now, the behavioral health tax, the revenue is in there only through March. The expenditures are status quo for all of the areas, predominantly, yes. So it's a full.
The revenue does not show a year's tax.
Right,
Okay.
right. So that's part of why the fund balance is being reduced also, because we're taking almost a whole year's worth of those expenditures, but they're not in the general, they're reimbursing the general fund. So every bit of their money comes in as a transfer. So it's actually included in this revenue number a whole year. So the expenses are in this and the revenue is in this. I'm sorry, I was mistaken. On the mental health tax fund, the revenue only shows 3 months worth of revenue
Through March.
through March. But for this, I'm showing a full year's worth of transfer in to cover those expenses because most of the expenses are actually showing up into the general fund and then they're getting a transfer in to cover it.
I'm still a little unclear. On your chart, you have columns labeled budget 23 and budget 24. And those are balanced as we're required to.
Yes,
But then the next column shows that we are spending about $15 million more than we're showing as revenue.
Yeah. So for 23, part of the problem is that you really didn't budget your revenues match closely to what actuals have been. For example, your sales tax was budgeted at 8.5 million and your sales tax revenue was coming in at 10 or 11 million. So it wasn't a very good depiction of your revenues for the 23 budget. Same thing for when you started out 23 budget, interest income, investment income was significantly under budgeted. And so there were several things in the revenue area that were under budgeted. And so I don't think it was a accurate depiction of where you would end up the year. I feel like 24, we're trying to do a better job of forecasting the revenues closer to reality and to what we anticipate. Therefore, you see, we're not using as much fund balance as we did last year. The other thing is that during the year, you have vacancies in your positions, and that creates unutilized budget. And I'm estimating on the general fund, we're running about, I know this year I'm estimating that we're going to run about $3 million of underutilization of salary, direct labor budgets, and then also underutilization of your benefits associated with those vacant positions. So that helps you to not dip into fund balance as much. These budgets don't take that into consideration.
On 23, would that account for, because the expenses are quite a jump from actual in 22. So in 23, would you say there's the actual, is it going to be less than that, you think? I mean,
Yes,
because
yes.
we built other things in. I'm trying to get a sense on where
Yeah.
it's growing and from the tax receipt side, from 22 to budget 24 seems pretty consistent. Although I'd like to see more economic activity around here, drive that a little more, but if
Yep.
expenses in 22, if that's actual 56.5, and then we're budgeting and we're trying to be pretty clean on this 71.
Mhm.
That's outpacing our receipts by
Right.
pretty good margin. Now
Right.
we've had
That's-
some
That's why.
reserves we've been able to tap into, but we're depleting those. It
Right.
looks like,
And
yeah.
that's why I want you to see this picture to know that as far as being able to fund significant amounts of new requests, I can't support us going much further into the fund balance because right now I'm concerned that we're not going to hit our target. And that's not good because that can affect our bond ratings, things like that, or can affect our audits. They may step up additional audit activity when they see that you're not meeting your projected fiscal policy.
So did you not include the jail's IT budget? We just got a note that it was left out.
Yeah, I don't think it was included and I wasn't sure. And so I can make that adjustment. It's right now she has a placeholder for that at 51,000. And she's on.
Yeah,
I
Kathy's
think-
correct. I didn't include it in my expenditures as it hadn't been approved. So it's not in what I submitted.
But most of the other expenditures were actually included in this 71 million. I just want to make sure, full disclosure, that they were. And most of them were the computer request for those computers that didn't get funded any longer at the attorney. It's AOC. I'm not sure.
So,
what the-
so that represents, about a $6 million drop in expenditures. Can you summarize what it is that we're spending less of? Or am I misreading?
Well, no, actually, on your expenditures, you budgeted last year 69 million.
Okay.
Without any fund balances. And this year, we're budgeting 71 million in expenses, which is actually an increase in expenses. And that's because we've included the impact of the collective bargaining for the sheriff's office and also a COLA for non-represented and exempt personnel. And then also there's various miscellaneous increases throughout the general budget that were discussed in individual departments, recaps of their budgets.
So it's really the expenditures are about 1.2 roughly,
Yes,
which isn't too bad considering we still have negotiations to go to complete.
yes, yes. And then the expenditures also dropped because we're not transferring out the general fund, those bonds that were from the Three Rivers. So that's the revenue dropped, but so did the expenditures. So.
Thank you.
But I just wanted to bring you to, I am concerned about our financial position right now, looking at the budget. And I just want to make sure that we're very cognizant of that as we go through.
So if we go, just so I'm totally clear, and I think I am, if we just said, yeah, this is fine, then we end up about $1 million short on the 8.3% of what we're supposed to have there. Yeah,
Yes. And
and
I have some
not
suggestions.
to mention, it's not a good practice to run deficits every
Right.
year anyways, but
I have a couple of suggestions. One of the things that when I was reviewing we call it Law and Justice Fund, but it's funded by the sales tax, the criminal justice sales tax. It looks like we're bringing, again, that's another one where we budgeted very conservatively on the revenue side. And we actually have about $400,000 worth of revenue that's not being budgeted, that probably could be budgeted. And I'd like to ask permission to budget that and then look at if there's some positions either on the new personnel request or actually positions we already are funding to move those to some additional positions over to the Law and Justice Fund.
Didn't we talk a couple of weeks ago about using that for a one-time only capital improvement related to law and justice?
For the fund balance, you have about a $1.6 million fund balance in that account. But we also have not been budgeting all of its revenue, just like we weren't on the general fund. And that's about $400,000 for
And
24.
that's not reoccurring. I mean, that's kind of set.
Yeah.
You don't want to add staff on a fund that will dry up in a year.
Well, this is your revenues. This is your annual revenue stream. The fund balance is 1.6 by itself. If that makes any sense.
that's what it has accumulated of what
Over
we
the
haven't
last
used
few-
of the,
right, over
annual.
the last few years. And so that's one recommendation I'd like to make, is to look at, is there any positions currently on the general fund that I could move over additional positions we can move over to the Law and Justice Fund to the tune of about $400,000. So that would help me with my fund balance issue also.
You said a critical word, existing positions.
Existing
We're not talking
positions.
about creating anymore.
No, existing positions. Do a shift.
I mean, we
Basically
kind of
do a
already
shift.
agreed to a number of increases, handful, during our workshops,
Yeah,
but this is not any additional.
Right.
Yeah.
This is to shift some existing general fund expenses. That's one recommendation to help me with our fund balance.
And would that proposed shift of a 3/4 time court commissioner to a 50% subsidized Superior Court judge help our bottom line also? We're not spending we wouldn't be spending as much in personnel costs by having the state pick up benefits in half the salary, where we do 100% of those now for the court commissioner.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it was presented that that would be pretty much a wash.
I think it was like maybe a $48,000
Yeah.
savings
I don't think it was anything significant savings.
that would require the discipline not to add additional staff to support that judge.
Yeah, that's the other concern. So this is the big picture, and what I'm doing right now is what I would recommend that in the future, we actually start off this way, looking at what are our projected revenues, and then apply some percentages increases to, the previous year's budgeted expenses, and kind of have a better picture before we start the budget process of what we look like financially at the very beginning. That's what I'm used to and accustomed to, but that's
Yeah.
not how this particular,
That's not what you inherited.
that's not what I inherited.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's not
That's
what the
fine.
plans already had laid out for me. So that's,
yeah. I don't disagree with that approach. It's kind of what I grew up in. I think we need to find a way to see the way I view things, and people can view them different, but our tax receipts and our expenses our real tax receipts and our expenses should even up. The fund balance, if you have an unknown and something happens, or we want to make a one-time investment or something, then that comes into play. But it appears to me we're using it to balance an operating budget when the balance should be the receipts coming in, not the fund balance. It's nice we've built up a fund balance, but I don't know if that should be for
Well,
normal
we
operations.
also were built into this budget for 24, as well as built into 23's budget. We had that annual transfer to the budget stabilization fund. So we last year we had a $1.5 million budget adjustment for that. This year it is included in this number to actually transfer out $550,000 to the budget stabilization fund. So that may be another suggestion that
That we
for
could look at.
24, we look at not doing that potentially, but that would require it to be change the budget, and the budget that you approve doesn't have that transfer. But we also just adopted a policy related to that too. So, but it requires all of your approval to change that transfer. And so that's one suggestion.
But yeah, that could be done. I mean, I get it. Governments have some idiosyncrasies and probably a little different than private business, but and I don't know that you can make a correction that gets it all done in 1 year, but I think we should drive towards
Mhm.
better responsibility, that we don't spend more than what tax receipts that come in. And if we have some excess, and that can be used for different things, but it's not a standard thing that we
Yeah.
back it up in our budget.
Most businesses don't budget all of their their salaries like we do, where we budget as if they're all filled all year for the budgeted amount. So that's part of it. But if you had a balanced budget like that, well, then if you had vacancies during the year, that money could go towards your rainy day fund or your reserves.
Yeah, those natural kind of things that happen.
Mhm. So
Interesting.
anyways, so this is where I sit right now with everything that I've put in, the budget. And so we're very, very tight. And we still have some collective bargaining agreements still out there, in negotiations. And so, we need to anticipate that as well. And then, I'm just going to take some hard looks and make sure that I've included all the revenues. And I've been doing that, going through at every department, looking at whether their revenues are increasing or decreasing. So, I feel pretty confident this is a good revenue number for
Yeah.
us.
If, my colleagues have been through this before, and if they
Yeah.
wanna offer any education to me, I'm more than happy to receive it.
Yeah.
But I'm just at what I'm seeing from past history. We need to correct course and start getting closer back on what I would call in line.
So your goal is not just a balanced budget, but no
Well-
transfer of funds?
Well, I don't think the transfers funds should be part of your budget. I think if it happens, it happens because something unexpected happened during the year, or we have a project. But when I head into it, I think you should strive that we think we're gonna get these kind of tax receipts this year. So this is what we can spend. And if we get, if some breaks come and we get some extra money, and you need to dip into that because wow, we had a catastrophe and something happened and we're not going to get those receipts, and we can dip into it. Yeah, I'm good with that. But just to make these, I don't know if you call it a savings account or whatever it is, just to make it as part of a standard, you can't live that way forever, because you're going to run out of those funds. And then what do? Then you make some big drastic things that nobody likes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way it appears to me.
But the ending fund balances were previous year's tax receipts, right? I mean, it all comes from the taxpayers. So the ending fund balance means we've been successful at not spending
Right.
up. You don't
Yes,
really
you
want
have.
us to continue, you don't want us to continue to spend 100% of the tax receipts, do you? That's where you get into trouble.
Well-
Because
If your
But-
budget is less than what you expect taxes to come in, I guess that's fine. That's where it's like a business. We expect so much revenue during the year and we second expense. Well, if we have a good year and revenue's up, then you sock some of it away into capital and you can use it for projects or different things. If we have a bad year, we have some savings in capital we can take out and do. It's just, I mean, a budget is a best guess, and things are gonna happen. I mean, it's the way life is.
And the budgets, I mean, the good news is that, the way the budgets are built, like I said, you're budgeting as if you're going to spend every direct labor dollar, even though, we have vacancies, we have turnover, things like that. You don't spend every single dollar that you have budgeted. So, and that's been favorable for the county.
what in a private business might be dividends to shareholder, for example,
Right.
we put in our cumulative reserve, or we spend it on capital improvements typically. Or we hire more people, but that's the risky part. If you have, you need to hire staff based on the tax receipts rather than previous year's savings. And
Yeah, I would agree with that because attaching a recurring debt to a one-time receipt, it never works out very well.
not very well.
So to be honest, I don't understand the chart and, but I think it would be easier if we looked at things from a cash flow basis. A lot of assumptions go into the budget and I'm pretty simplistic. Money in, money out. I want to see how that balances and within the money in, I would include everything. So it'd just be one number and on the outflow would be one number also. Then when we see that we have a problem, we can start playing with that. I don't like, I'm really mightily surprised that we have a budget of 2023 at 77 plus compared to a budget of 54. And then I'm looking at the expenses and somehow our expenses went up by 13 million. And I don't think we hired that many people. So there's something in there that I'm not sure what I should be taking
Yeah,
account.
I probably should have showed you 22's budgeted numbers
That was,
in
Yeah.
addition, in addition to the actuals. I did have it. I didn't put it on here, but
yeah,
we had budgeted for basically that $13 million right there. We had budgeted for us to utilize fund balance to the tune of $13 million. So expenses coming in at 56 was actually budgeted at $69 million, close to 60, over 60. I'll go get the numbers so they have the actual numbers. But we did budget way more for 2022 than the actuals came in at.
and the ARPA money we took, that was in 22.
In 22, your ARPA money, it's not part of general fund. It's in its own fund, but it,
We did bring in 10+ million into the general fund.
oh, yeah, you're right. There was some reimbursements. Yes, there was.
Yeah, and that confuses me because I don't know whether we're at the end of a plank and the next step is going to be into the alligator pit.
Yeah.
And I think
So-
that's what you guys are concerned
Yeah,
about.
Yeah.
I think your expenses for 2022 are understated because of ARPA potentially. And I could depict that and show that better.
Except when we spent ARPA on our operations to combat, all those plexiglass windows and the new construction or new office arrangements, the IT stuff. Those are reflected as revenues into the general fund. So that
No,
bumped it- that
there
bumped it up to-
were two, we took I think, Kaylee would probably chime in somewhere. We took 10 million that was supposedly lost revenue that came in. Now, we took it as lost revenue, even though I don't know that we suffered any lost revenue. And then the other stuff, paying for the windows or whatever it is, that came out of the other 12 million or so.
Yeah.
So I
But it reimbursed, some of it reimbursed general fund. So that's how it. Yeah, so if it came in as a reimbursement, it came in potentially as, it may have come in as revenue. I
Oh,
have to
that-
look at it.
That lost revenue It was that wonderfully federal way of showing a loss, anything less than a 4% gain. It was considered a loss, very tortured logic, and our revenues didn't go down at all. So it's very strange.
And where
So
I was,
thank our
where I was
grandchildren.
at, we actually had to do a calculation of lost revenue. We had to prove it up.
Till they said you don't have to prove it anymore.
Yeah, but we had to have our rationale, and they gave us 3 methodologies. So, I don't know how y'all, how
Well,
you had to do it here
We
at
got
state.
the auditor's office
state and county.
chiming in, I hope.
I think
Oh, there
Kaylee
she
was
is.
on vacation.
Oh,
Carolyn's in.
But I'm here.
Carolyn's there.
I just had to be moved over. So yes, Arn, you were correct. There were 2 what we would call pots of money. One of those pots was direct qualification, meaning it had to, in order to use the funds, we have to direct those monies on things that specifically qualify, HVAC systems, certain things like that. The other pot, $10 million, is specifically revenue loss. That was absorbed not into the general fund, but we created a fund for it in the general fund, and we have been spending that money as we go. So I have the budget in front of me. A lot of that revenue loss has been allocated to public works, most of it actually, public works projects. Let's see. Awarded to public works, actually 5.5 million of that. More of that actually. It's broken out by different projects: South Cloverdale Road, Rock Creek Culvert, Hazeldale Road slide repair, West Side Highway slide repair, all those things. That was from your revenue loss allocation.
The water infrastructure could be used out of the other pot, right?
Yes, actually, you're right. There's a lot of water projects, Carroll's Water Association, Riverside Park, Beacon Hill Water Sewer, all of those are out of direct qualifications. You're right.
so if I look at the numbers for 22, is there 10 million in there, or is,
Yes, this
Or-
is how the money worked. They just dumped it on us. We got it. It's
but it
ours.
was 2022?
Yeah.
Because I'm still trying to figure out how we get from 56 million in 22 to 69 in 23. And I'm truncating rather than doing yeah, anyhow. If we were comparing apples to apples, and I know there's a question about that, I just don't understand what it was that we did that would account for 13 million or 50.
I don't
I'll
have
call
the
it
reports that
13.
you're looking at in front of me. I'm assuming it's just a report, being able to explain the report, but I'm not sure.
Well,
Oh.
I'm sort of looking for an answer that will drive me back to the cash flow situation, because in where we are, we will get some things, and let me call them for ease, grants. But if we start to digest grants as they'll come next year the same, we're going to end up in some kind of trouble. So it's like the most reliable income doesn't mean it's absolutely reliable, but most reliable is going to be what? Property taxes and the sales and use tax. And I call that the base cash flow. Oh, where's a pirate that just showed up for a moment?
Yeah, I turned my camera off.
Tracy.
The additional revenue is the bonds refinance. Deborah's in the audience. She may be able to help. I don't remember which year it was, if it was 21 or 22, but the board refinanced the bonds for the landfill. they went into the general fund and then those sat in the general fund and we got
And
to
that-
collect
Yeah,
revenue
that's
for
why the
that.
cash flow is really interesting.
Yes, and then they were refinanced. So there's about 10.5 or 11 million of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the report you sent to us the other day through the end of September, our,
Mhm.
on the general fund, actual expenditure year to date is 47 million at the end of September. So if you're roughly 15, 16 million a quarter, if that stays true, then we'll be somewhere around 60 for actual in 23 compared to 56 for 22 actual. So it's still a gain. It doesn't appear that it'll be the 13 million. So I think
No.
some of that, we can call it fluff or whatever, some of that overestimate was in there.
Yes, in the 69 million.
And revenue, you were showing year to date through September 41.6,
Mhm.
and our budget is 54.8, so that's probably gonna be pretty close.
I think.
Well,
we're
we'll
gonna
probably
be
get
over-
more than that because our tax receipts come in.
Right,
Auntie.
October.
So that one will probably exceed the 55 or whatever
Right,
of the estimate.
That's what I was saying, 23, your revenue was significantly understated because you were using, for example, 8.5 million for sales tax when sales tax was coming in at 10, 11, or 11 million the previous year.
But I think when the all actual numbers are all done, it's gonna be pretty close to balanced on actual. It may be a little under, but I think it's gonna be pretty
Yeah.
close.
Yeah, another way of saying that is the ending fund balance will not be impacted by
Right.
15 million.
Right, right. I think,
Right,
yeah, I think that's gonna be the case. And I think some of that's gonna,
Yeah,
so
So
it
if
should help us look better.
right. But I took that into consideration when I budgeted.
Did you?
For 24's beginning fund balance, I took that into consideration. Because I was looking at investment fund balances that I get from the Treasury office in order to forecast fund balance, cash.
so
What I could do is I could add another column to this that basically, this was budgeted 23. I could add a column that says anticipated 23 for you using my monthly reports and forecasting out the rest of the year. And then for 22, I can show you what was originally budgeted for 22 as well.
So I don't think I need to understand how earlier and now match up. And I really appreciate that you're trying to make that makes sense in a more universal way. So I'm just focused on budget for 2024. And that tells me that we're shy $12 million again.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Ouch.
Well, I haven't seen these reports
Yeah.
and I haven't analyzed them, so I don't have, I would have to look at them before I said anything for certain. But when we refinanced that debt, we didn't get any funds into the county. So I'm not sure what Tracy, I can't really answer what she was saying because I'm not sure what we didn't bring money into the revenue for that.
No, we
refinance.
actually reduced our ultimate cost for holding the bonds for $900,000 for the next 10 years or something like
Yeah,
that.
that was the savings over 10 years, but it wasn't like we got all that money in at one time.
Yeah,
And so there wasn't an increase of revenue from that. And my understanding of the ARPA money, it all went into the ARPA fund. And it's what expenditures come out of the general fund and get reimbursed from the ARPA fund.
Correct.
So it's,
Mhm.
it's not, there wasn't, that $10 million wasn't deposited into the general fund.
But as it was used, it created a revenue source for the general fund.
Well, the expense would go out of general and then it'd be reimbursed from ARPA. So it's basically a wash.
But but the sources have to be identified. So they're gonna be listed as coming from ARPA.
Yeah. But I don't believe ARPA was budgeted in 23's budget
It's,
No.
as revenue or as expenses.
we might have had some
Not in
expenses
general
flop over
fund.
the year to
Yeah.
finish up budgets.
Yeah, not in general
billings.
fund.
Yeah.
And then some, but there, somehow there was they did record in 2022, they did record the receipt like in later part of the year for those bond, for that proceeds, the 20 million, and they recorded it in miscellaneous income. But I think later the financials were adjusted, Carolyn, correct, for that the funds that were in trust.
The 22, yeah, when we refunded it, we did that in 22.
Too.
And we do have to make some corrections to the journal entries for that bond.
Yeah.
And I don't have the paperwork in front of me, so I don't recall which accounts they were.
Yeah. The most mundane question in 24, do you have a COLA for the non-represented also?
I set aside funds in the general fund for all for the positions that are non-represented and exempt, both
Yeah,
of
thank
those
you. Yeah.
categories. And then, as I said, the sheriff's office, their bargaining agreement and their increases are already built into the 24 budget as well. So there's some that's not built in, but the majority of
Mhm.
your COLAs and are built in.
We just got a
For
comment.
the deputies only,
Yeah, that's,
The ones that settled.
they're the only.
Yeah,
ones.
they're the only ones that are settled.
Clerical staff hasn't settled at
No.
this point.
No. Yeah, I think
Well,
there's about 4 that have not settled, 4 or 5.
so if I use a round number of 100,000 for employee fully burdened, is that a usable rule of thumb, or should I use some other number? I mean, I'm looking at 11 million, so we have to start figuring out how it is we're gonna deal with that, right?
Yes. Or I know, I guess what I'm trying to say is just, I want to be cognizant of the fact that you have everything budgeted. You do during the year have savings or unfulfilled budget that comes back into the general fund. So 11 million is the worst case scenario, is if you had every single position filled, every single expenditure consumed. And you that typically doesn't happen. Typically, you have about $3 million, $4 million worth of salary and benefits that's budgeted but not consumed, not expended.
Yeah.
Is that a
That's a
number?
very conservative number.
What's a very conservative
The
number?
4 million of salaries and benefits.
Yeah, part of what I liked about your general thinking was that you really wanted the budget to be reality as close as you could come. So I would expect some years you'll guess high and some you'll guess low. We've always guessed on the budget too high, and we always have this magic surplus, and that has always bothered me. But so you're saying that you still have a latitude in here that you expect it's 4 million.
And that's very conservative.
So what's the real number instead of 11,564,000?
I don't know.
Somewhere around 7, 6, 7.
7.3. Figures say, right?
Well, yes, I think you're anywhere between 4 million and 7 million that you end up being not utilizing out of your budget.
Just because of opening float.
Mhm. Float.
Yeah, it's
People
important,
sit vacant.
Mostly turnover,
it's important for us to understand that because hiring someone is a commitment, should be a long-term
right?
commitment. And if I'm a department head and I know that I have not filled a position, but I know that I'm looking at a trouble ahead of me, I'm going to do my very best to see, can I finagle it so as I don't have to bring another individual on board? So it's important that we understand that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm probably usually err on the optimistic side. I think our year end's gonna look better than the projected, so I think some of that's gonna transfer. We're not gonna look so weak, but what I would tell you, what I would do if I was running a retail shop or something and I was a little bit upside down. Yeah, I don't think you can correct that in a year, but what you can do is say for the next 3, 4, 5 years or whatever, our expenses we're gonna hold equal. If you want other staff, you find it through efficiencies until the receipts start catching up. You probably have a little more leeway to do that in a government entity than you do in a retail side, but I think some of those commitments, we can't run like this forever, even on the government side, right?
Right.
I mean, but that's one way I would consider it in a retail setting. You say, okay, we're gonna hold this for 5 years and build business and bring it back up.
That's the idea behind the rainy day reserve.
Yeah. Try the best you can not to affect people's lives. They're paying house payments and doing all that, but realizing we got to get to where we're equal.
So, it is absolutely appropriate that we operate conservatively, and you've given us conservative figures. At the same time, we need to always be aware of what the long-term trends are. When I give talks about the county government, I talk about our tax situation and property taxes, sales tax, and then a little tiny bit of timber tax. Those are the main taxes. Lots of other fees that go along to help generate the revenue. I don't think the record will show that revenues have dropped in any of those categories except the timber harvest. Because once you cut the trees, it's another 2 generations before you can harvest again. And that's very difficult to budget the fluctuations. We only have 11,000 acres that we get revenue off of. Timber tax is a little bit more stable, but that revenue is certainly changes. So again, we always have to go back to the ending fund balances that vary, represent what we've been talking about, the underspending because of the vacancies and the other cuts that are made at a normal period of time. We are not, unlike the federal government, we are not borrowing from the future to make these expenses. The revenue is there.
Right.
We have to be careful. We have to be careful about hiring staff with one-time only monies. And I think we've done a pretty good job of doing that to keep from getting the trouble in. But it's easy to misunderstand the ending fund balances come from our revenues. We do have a couple, I think we have one bond series left, and that's for the headquarters landfill. I think that's the only long-term debt we have, right?
Thank you, Emily.
Plus, I didn't bring the bond listing, but there's a little bit on the 2015
Mhm.
bond.
That was yeah. But again,
Yeah.
I mean, the point I'm trying to make is, we haven't been borrowing money to make,
Correct.
No.
make expenses.
Yeah.
We've done it the right way, and
When we
Yeah.
have the morgue debt.
The morgue, you have the morgue.
Yeah,
the morgue bonds, that's right, yeah.
and the 2015 is A or B of the landfill? Or it's just another one that I've,
Yeah, off the top of my head, I can't remember. It's not the 2014 A and B is the landfill that we
okay,
just
it's something
refunded.
else.
Yeah, and I can't tell you off the top of my head.
And then the 12, one of those, there's an A and B on the 12, and one retires at the end of this year. And then the other one, I think, retires at the end of 24.
Maybe
Okay.
that's the one I'm thinking of, is
Yeah.
the 2012.
Refinance.
Mhm.
So all this is to say, circle back, this is just to show you that you do have the revenues available in your fund balances to meet this 2024's budget. And this is worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And so that's what I just wanted to point out to you is worst case scenario, we could be very close on not meeting our targeted financial policy of the 8.3% in reserve. But I think we're going to be there. I'm just going to go back and scrub it, and, things like if I have your permission, if I have some additional revenues in the criminal justice, shift some positions that are currently on general fund to the criminal justice fund, if I can do that, things like, so
I
I'll
think
bring
that's a
all
good
those to
idea.
you
Yeah.
and make sure that we are absolutely right on target with our fiscal policy.
I don't think we'd ever turn down listening to your
Yeah.
suggestions. And I totally agree with my colleague. We need to try and look at what the future is coming in. And this is a little bit kind of starting to tell us maybe the future is going to be a little bit tighter, and we got to do things. And and I want to be real clear, when I talk about tax receipts coming in and those growing, my idea of those growing is through enhanced economic activity, not through enhanced assessments.
Tax rate.
It
Mhm.
makes no sense to me to take something out of somebody's wallet and then say, go spend more. It doesn't work that way.
And
So-
these numbers that we put in, I took your recommendation yesterday on the assessment on levies, and we utilized a very conservative number without the 1%, not taking the 1%, right, the statutory. But it did consider taking the banked amount, which that's about $100,000
Yeah.
too. So, but
I-
it's a very conservative revenue projection for those numbers.
And I've just seen too many times in history, Truman, Kennedy, Reagan, people drive more economic activity than we can. That's what they do best. They go out and they buy, and it brings in, typically it'll bring in more revenue than you gave up. And so for our county, I think we need to continue to push. We have a lot of great assets of bringing good solid business in here and beefing those through natural stuff, and then I think if we look at this, I think we have to consider some kind of plan. Hey, for the next 5 years, we're going to hold these expenses at this. Not saying you can't have somebody, but you're going to have to find it through efficiencies rather than increases. Of course, I'm just one thought sitting here.
I agree with what you're saying, but I'm sure that our assessor will mention that economic activity does have an impact on property assessments, because people improve the value of their homes with the improvements. And the law requires you to reflect that with your annual inspections, so. But what you're saying is we don't raise the rates in
Right.
order to come up with the difference. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No, actually, I interpret what he's saying. Here's our pizza pie, rather than chopping it up into finer pieces or reapportioning it, why don't we grow it?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
As a reminder from the conversation yesterday, though, the assessed values do not determine any more or less for your budget. I just want to keep reiterating that part.
Well, yeah, and I'm not so much talking about your property. I'm just saying if people have more in their wallet, they're gonna go down and they're gonna spend more and it creates more receipts for the agencies coming in.
Just wasn't sure where Dennis was going with the
Yeah.
whole scenario.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So circling back on this is the big picture. We have requests that have been made and we, so today, there's a request for new personnel, that have been made. And we, need to finalize those so that I can put them in the budget or not
Are
put
they,
them in the
are
budget.
they all in this number? You've included all that you
No.
know about?
No, they're not all included in this number. The only things that are included in this number are the technology requests that were made. They're all included because they've been
Oh.
included in the budgets. So we have about, if you go to slide, your tab 16. We have a little over $900,000 worth of personnel requests just for the general fund. Now, they don't all have, some of these, I'm gonna make some recommendations. They don't all have to come off of the general fund.
So we have 12 FTE requests
Yes, we have 12.
and this 900,000, is that projected salaries, benefits, all that stuff?
That's all inclusive, fully loaded. For example, the request from the coroner's office includes a reduction in another line.
Yeah.
Of extra help. So for a total of 13,000. The drug court request includes a therapy. One of these positions was to be reactivated. And we could, if we wanted to, utilize the behavioral health tax for that one because it probably originally was on that. So that's a thought.
Well,
For reactivating it.
I think his honor mentioned that we have unspent CJTA monies that the state has available for drug court costs. So we need to figure out how to recover that because it's, we kind of, I follow those numbers at our quarterly meetings and haven't figured out why we haven't been spending and it's quite a bit, isn't it, Judge?
Get the number currently, there's a chunk there though, I think we're defined in some of the reports from some of the agencies. We don't spend that.
So again, it kind of gets back to what you were saying.
Yeah, so
If you want to expand salary, find the different revenue sources and we have some.
I don't know if that revenue source is in our budget.
Yeah.
Is it missing from our budget? Yep.
Do you recall what kind of number
I'd have to look at it.
Yeah, I don't recall it being a huge amount of money. And do you recall if it's constrained just to drug court?
The CJTA monies pretty much are drug court activities. Yeah. Yeah. To go back to the original question, per capita figure per employees, here's an indication about it.
Exactly. No, I figured that one
80,000 or
out
so,
already.
yeah.
Yeah.
Some are more expensive. I think deputies, we usually use the
So about
150
75.
150 because you have to add a car.
Yeah. And then,
And we're learning, those are getting more expensive.
Bit more expensive.
Yeah.
so we also, you don't have the opioid
No.
dollars in there too.
That's
We haven't figured
200,000.
out exactly where all the opioid dollars can go to.
right. I don't have, I
Oh.
don't have that. So that's another source of either shifting or shifting something that's
Yeah.
current. So it's another source as well. There was another, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway, so there's the possibility of some of these maybe could be shifted to another source, and I'd be happy to do that. Look at that. Look at that CJAT, is that what it's called?
CJTA, Criminal Justice Treatment Act.
Okay. And then,
That's not just drug court, right? It's behavioral
Well,
court.
you have to be accused of originally you have to be accused of a felony crime. And then you get into the treatment with the promise
Yeah.
that you don't have to serve. But they use the monies for UAs, part of the testing process. And other staffing.
I was just thinking. Oh, never mind. I get entertained easily.
Okay.
So Kathy, one of the conservative measures you use on your revenue estimates is to use the previous year's sales tax revenue trends, correct?
mhm.
Yeah, okay. So that adds a little extra flexibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although we're not supposed to talk about it.
So we-
Yeah, I don't know how to think about that because the sales tax revenue will actually grow because of inflation, but we're having to pay out of inflation also. So it's like first come gets a little bit of advantage, and I don't know where we are in that list, but I suspect we're overall losers.
Inflation probably outpacing.
Yeah.
Receipts.
Well,
Okay.
The auto companies are settling at 25% COLAs over 5 years, so that's 5% a year.
Is that
So
what,
you're saying the police cars are gonna get even more expensive?
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
did that, that's a UAW contract that's just been signed?
That's been the trend. Stellaris and Ford, and I just heard GM is in the process of getting it approved, so.
But it isn't an affair accompli. There's still, it's not a done deal, or is it? I don't know. I'm just suggesting because
News is all I'm reflecting it, so.
Think-
I think they announced, they suspended the strikes. That was the announcement yesterday afternoon.
and
Yeah,
it's
because
okay.
of a pending settlement.
Pending means it got to go before the body now.
Right.
Yeah, it's really, really hard to know, you know, in the negotiations, my salary will go up 5%, but I also end up having to pay something else, or it's 5% here and another 5% here because they took more healthcare funds off my table. But yeah, that is a good harbinger.
Well, Kathy, if you want one man's opinion, I'll tell you what I see and knowing what I think is gonna happen this year. It doesn't make me throw up. Though I think if you accept it, then that's the baseline. And for the next whatever years, I would be very, very adamant that we stay at that baseline until we grow some economic activity to do it. To let the economic activity kind of catch up to it. So I don't know if that's makes you feel better or it makes you feel worse, but
I think we also talked about the Law and Justice Fund being available for some other kinds of expenditures, not necessarily salary, but, substituting for general fund dollars.
Yeah,
Right.
so I'd like to look at that. Some of the positions on the new position report also, there's other income to offset it. Like I said, the coroner's office is willing to give up some expense to offset theirs. The treasurer's office, I don't know if it's on yours, it's not on mine, but I ask it to be changed because they're moving over 60,000 from an investment fund to help cover their operations in total. That's not on here as well. It's not on mine, but I
Yeah.
thought it was on yours. So their number's less than the 130.
And sometimes you see you're always going to have that salary expense, but I have seen it at times where putting a body here or there improves some efficiencies in some areas. So it cuts it a little bit over this side. You still have that body to pay for, but say the full boat is 80,000 for that person, you're saving maybe 10 in efficiency. So it's 70. So I get that some of that can happen if put the right body in the right place. So I don't always look at it as 100%. It's not always the case, but at times it is. For example, I could, and I go back to my career when I was in mortgage, I could put a body in at a certain wage and know that we'd bring in that much business that they pretty much paid for themselves. Now you still had that wage, but you're bringing in some revenue to offset it or bringing in some efficiencies to offset it. And I believe in government, if we do it right, some of that can happen here too.
So I think
Agreed.
most of the department heads that are here have personnel requests. So right now, personnel requests are the only new personnel or the items that are not included in their current budget, the base that I showed you today. So the question is, I'm sure they're here to support and ask, will any of their positions be approved for me to include in the budget?
Yeah.
And
I would like us to consider, and I think that means we have to decide now if we're going to help budget. I really think it's advisable to take the mobile crisis team sheriff allocation from 4 down to 2. I prefer to go down to 1 there and let that proof of concept occur.
Well, I think when they were having a discussion, it really, was it bodies or was a dollar amount assigned to so many hours?
It's very confusing the way it was presented. I couldn't make heads or tails of it. I know
think
the
we-
number was 403,000.
yeah, without their adjustment in that contract also had an adjustment for CPI. So it'd be about 434,000 after the CPI
But you
adjustment.
said it had only been half used.
Yeah, in 1 year, y'all utilized about 330,000 of it. And the current year, I think we had looked at it through August or some month, and they had only utilized about 189,000 of it. But that's because they also didn't have all 4 positions
Exactly.
in place. So,
So it was,
Wow, that was a little confusing because I thought they said, well, we contract for 4,000 hours, something of that nature.
it-
So
it's
however
eight-
many
it's 8,000.
bodies they use
little
to
over
make up that
8,000.
4,000 hours,
8,000.
8,000.
8,000 hours?
Yeah.
So in that scenario, it's either 2 bodies down or it's from 8,000 hours to 4,000 hours.
yeah,
Right.
and the numbers that were presented, that we were surviving fine with far fewer hours. So if I could talk you into going to instead of 434,000 to 217,000, I think that makes more sense, and always sort of violating your rule just a little bit. I think you're correct. We need to view this as a staff we have to live with for quite a while. This is what I would consider an experimental program. even though everybody claims to have the data, I just haven't seen it. So we may want to go up on that. We may want to go down.
We contract for 4 FTE. We did not start until halfway through year 2022. We have had almost fully funded in 23. So it is FTE.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. If you're asking me if you could convince me
I-
to cut that in
I
half,
move-
yeah, you could.
I'll
convince
make a
me.
motion. I move, we drop that down from 42.
Well, I guess I have a problem. You said it's a pilot program. We're in the middle of the experiment. Then you want to cut the experiment in half. That doesn't make
No,
sense.
no, I don't want to cut the experiment in half. We were told the data we got suggested it was six incidences per person per month or some outrageous number. In any event, it's early enough in the program and we have been given no evidence. I really appreciated the deputy's honesty in the answers. I think
Well,
it's,
I'm a little bit nervous about doing that in the middle of the program. We just got a notice that two persons will not allow for 7-day-a-week coverage, so. You wanna,
How many number of people did they say they had done? I'm not sure it's a 7-day week.
I don't remember, but even today, we got discussions that involved the health officer and well, they're always available 24 hours a day, something like that. I don't know what to do with those things, like 7-day-a-week coverage. I mean, we're not in an ideal situation. Maybe that's an important factor. Is that 5% of the calls? Is that 20% of the calls? Can we really do something wherein we stagger the number of people? I mean, after all, we've been operating without these people for a long time. And now we're told we need them. That's the story how we climb the ladder of adding people.
Keep in mind, that's just that's on the behavioral health tax.
Well, that would, depending on whether we approve the mental health tax, it's going to come out of the general fund, but regardless, it's taxpayer dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah, because this budget doesn't lose any of those positions if the mental health tax stops, or we're looking at a way to fund all that stuff. So,
but remember, they're not Calais County employees. We contract with Columbia Wellness
Right.
based on and they get reimbursed based on the hours for those FTEs. So. Because at $400,000, there's not much in the way of benefits.
Okay.
But you are right. It's one of those things we should be looking at. I'm uncomfortable with making a decision today, but it needs to be one of those programs that we look at pending some more information.
we did have a motion from Commissioner Mortensen, so we need to act on it. And the motion was, if I remember it right, was to cut it from 4 FTEs to 2 FTEs in this coming budget.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any comments anybody wants to make?
I think Katrina made a comment.
Mental health tax pays out of the health department budget, no cost go through the sheriff's budget. Who's coming on?
Can I help at all? This is Katrina.
Yeah.
Hello, Commissioners. The mental health tax is paid through the Health Department. It does come from mental health dollars. The expenses come out through the Health Department and the revenue comes out of the Health Department. So it won't affect the general fund Sheriff's Department budget, any changes that you do make. We have spent $260,000 of the mental health tax dollars for this year. We have $145,000 left for the rest of this year, and we are fully staffed with 4 FTEs right at the moment. Any other questions I could help you with?
Actually, I didn't think I had a question.
Okay, let me know if you have any questions.
So it's not part of this budget?
It's not part of the general fund.
Yeah.
It's on the it's directly on the mental health, behavioral health.
However, what if the mental health tax goes away?
Right.
Okay, then it becomes a general fund obligation.
Yes.
But also regardless of all that, I'm trying to take a look at it and say, I don't think we're getting value for our money.
How do you know that?
I
How do
beg
you know
pardon?
that? We haven't had the full report yet. We agreed early on, it should be a year and that's sometime.
Correct. I don't remember the numbers and the deputy presented us some numbers and it was a woefully low number. It's like when you talk to OPD, he tells you how many cases they have to handle. That number we got that was equivalent to that was pretty dang low. In addition to that, I have met with the ladies who are in charge of this program from Columbia Wellness. I've heard them speak twice, and I've already mentioned their interest is not in relieving the deputy from an obligation to understand a mental health patient. Their view is this is another welfare program. They talk about, well, we interceded with this guy, and then, I followed it up. I got him some blankets, and then I'd really like to follow up. And I've heard them speak. They really want to grow the whole thing.
Thank goodness we don't use anecdotes for our decision making.
We
We need full information. The sheriff's on, Jordan is on. This bears the need for more thorough discussion. When they talk about 6 clients per person, how much time does it take to work with a client through the program? I don't know.
The whole-
Raw numbers had some questions of what type of time commitment are we talking about? We don't have that information.
The whole idea behind this was to assist a deputy on site. And
Then
I
let's
asked
ask
that
the deputies if they're getting the assistance they need.
you were here. I asked Jordan Spencer the same question, how much time, this and that and so forth. And it was fairly clear.
I can rehash what I presented to you guys. Can you hear me okay?
It's a little fuzzy.
Okay, I'll try to speak up. What I presented to you guys last time was of the 304 days, they had 285 calls and we logged 218 hours on those calls that were direct assists to the deputies. So 218 hours worth of deputy time that we did not have to respond to dealing with calls. Those are the numbers that I gave you guys last week.
There was another element that I just recalled to throw in. The mobile crisis team is something that the ASO is already under contract with Columbia Wellness to provide that service because they don't do a good enough job. I guess, I don't know. The sheriff and other law enforcement people think they have to have their own staff. In the big discussions leading up to our saying, okay, there was a lot going under that it's really it's really inconvenient, or convenient, depending on how much sarcasm you want, to have a contract with the ASO only to go outside because they're not fulfilling the obligation of the contract. Putting that aside, there was something else. My apologies.
Well, Chairman Dahl, this is Brad Thurman, logging in. Just like to say, my recollection when this plan was approved, it was going to be a 2-year pilot program, and really didn't get it up and running really fully till earlier this year in early 2022. So took some time to get it fully ramped up and get it to this point so far. I wouldn't just suggest that be observed. We're observing it as well. Trying to collect statistics on there, establish their what they're effectively doing out in the field, but would encourage you to continue it maybe for 1 more year at current staffing, and we can revisit this at that point. If we do scale back to 2, that would take some days of the week they would not be available to us, and limit their availability. Mobile crisis is there, as Commissioner Mortensen has mentioned. However, they're different, their focus is on in progress type people in crisis. The group that we have here locally is working with people to keep them from getting into that point, crisis state, where they do become a greater impact on the mental health system, and are also particularly the criminal justice system has been the plan all along, keep them out of the backseat of our police cars, out of the jail. Once they get charged with a crime, you incorporate the courts, the prosecutor, and the Office of Public Defense. Dealing with cases that are generated from these folks. That's the whole intent behind this, is to keep people out of those systems that already exist and are funded, criminal justice and the mobile crisis side of things. So that would be my request today. If you continue it, at least give us 1 more year at the current staffing to fully assess the impact of what they're doing for us and in the community as well.
Well, yeah, I think a pilot program is not a license to do anything you would like to do. And I had discussions with you, Brad, probably over a year ago in your office about that. And I mentioned to you my concerns at the time. And so it isn't like it's anything new. It's been something I alerted to. The idea you just mentioned, they want to follow up and prevent, all the bad things from happening by being good here. So you are actually offering up that they really are trying to do another welfare system, and there just always will be a justification for expanding a welfare system. Who wants to argue against motherhood and apple pie? All I can say is the pilot program, the rules were violated almost immediately. The rules that I understood was there to help the deputy negotiate an on-site situation. It had nothing to do with anything else.
Well, that was only one aspect of that, is to help deputies dealing with folks, but also at times they work independently of deputies, like I said, to keep these people out of both the criminal justice system and the mental health system to any greater extent than they already are, or prevent them from even starting down that road if we can help them out.
Well, the idea there was the MCT person would forward a reference over to any of the multiple agencies we have around, or entities that try to deal with that. It wasn't to start our own.
Well, and that's not really the intent, or I think what's happened, to try to get people plugged into the services that whatever causes them to come across our radar, whether it's homelessness, mental health, or substance abuse, get them diverted into those resources. And like I said, keep them out of further involvement with the criminal justice system.
And I can, again, on the numbers that I provided you guys last week, 226 of the 266 clients that they dealt with in that time frame 226 of those clients were entered into services, and that ranges from mental health to medical to EV support to housing and even employment.
Jordan, I didn't really understand what you said. I couldn't make out the words.
Okay, I was just reiterating, so we talked about the calls for service and then the contacts that were made, over 1,000 contacts that they made during those 304 days, where they dealt with 266 clients, 266 personnel. 226 of those were entered into ongoing services. Some behavioral health, some medical, substance abuse, EV support, housing, employment.
Jordan, another way of saying that is that you had 218 diverted from jail.
226.
And these are unique contacts?
Meaning,
Is there people in there you've contacted 3-4 times in that number, or is these unique?
no, they have, so 266 clients, and they made contact over 1,000 times. So they saw those clients more than one time. Because generally they don't go right into services right away. And so they have to kind of follow up with those individuals. But those are all contacts. Some of those were, we call them frequent flyers for our office, that we haven't heard from in a while, which is a way that we can
Yeah,
at least tell internally that there's some assistance going on our end.
yeah. So of the 266 contacts or whatever, how many bodies is that? 50 people? 60 people? 100?
No, the 1,057 contacts were made with
So it's
266 people,
Okay,
266 unique individuals.
all right.
And 226 of those individuals were entered into services. And you guys had mentioned it as well last week, that it can be difficult to help the unwilling. And a lot of times these services, you have to kind of build a rapport with the individual, build their trust, so they are a little more willing to get into those services. And so that's why there was so many contacts made with those amount of people.
And when was, I know you mentioned it and I apologize, but when did you start this? When was your first contact?
I went back to the start of the year, January 1st of this year. And these numbers were from October 13th. So January 1st of this year to October 13th.
So about roughly 9.5 months so far.
Correct.
In the initial conversation, when you guys did this, you were looking at it. When were you going to review? At the end of the year? I wasn't here when that decision was made.
I'm sorry, my mind drifted. Would you ask again?
When was the review period? Do you recall?
No, I don't know that a specific review period
Yeah.
was mentioned.
Was there any parameters we were looking at, like dollars saved or estimated dollars saved from jail or I mean, I don't,
What, was it well spec'd out? Was anything
Yeah.
spec'd out? No, it was just primary, and most of my motivation with law, with the sheriff's office is I want them to feel protected and supported.
yeah.
And so
Well,
the claim was that this MCT would help them be be more safe and more productive. I said,
I-
all right, let's go ahead and try it. But
And that
like
would
I
be my
mentioned last
concern
time,
too.
I got no data in 9 months. And I had early on contacted the sheriff himself saying, let's not turn this into another welfare program.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, I'm the one that's gonna ends up deciding this thing. And I'm struggling on both sides because I wanna, our sheriff, it's important to me that our sheriffs are safe out there and our deputies are not put in harm's way, but I don't know if this is, I'm struggling. That's really my sole judge is are our deputies safer because of this? And I don't know that I'm struggling making that determination. I think there's a lot of services these people can be put into, and I'm not, I don't know if just establishing this program to put them into services is the right thing. If we establish it because when our deputies go out and react that there's a safety factor for them, I can live with that. So, I guess what I'm saying in, Sheriff Brad, I think we need to give you some more time, but I really want to know that it protects our people out in the field. The fact that they get services through this, I don't have a whole lot of concern with. I think there's a lot of places that can help them get services. What I want to know is our people, the people that we put out there in harm's way are being put in a better place because of it. So if I would vote to give you more time, but that's the kind of stuff I would ask to see if that seems reasonable.
No, I appreciate those comments and, yeah, certainly like I said, we're watching this as well and would definitely want to see the, history in particular of folks that we've contacted, what their more long-range trajectory is, if they stay off the radar, more so than other folks. We certainly want to make that impact. The reality of the situation is a lot of these folks, they would not get services or wouldn't get off the radar if they didn't first come in contact with us. So we really, when law enforcement gets involved with these folks, that's really the first chance for us to make a difference and get them off that trajectory where otherwise they may go down the road and become more criminally active and result in criminal record and incarceration, those expenses associated with that. So do appreciate your sentiment and would request a little more time to track this and have a further discussion on this.
Yeah, I'm not saying you terminate it. I'm saying you cut it back a little bit, show the seriousness of the matter, seriousness of the questions. I haven't said it's a useless program. I have said how it's being carried out, I don't believe is the correct approach. I don't know how you get that message across. But anyhow, so this is not terminating the pilot program.
So we have a motion to reduce the program
To two people.
to two people. So I'd call for the vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
I'm gonna stay with the program this time, give them a little more time. Just, I'd like to look at it longer. I really, and I'll reiterate again, I really want to see how it helps our deputies. I don't care about the services. We got dozens of places around town they can find services. What I care about is safety of our officers, and that's what I'll be looking for. So those opposed?
Do I say aye or nay? Nay.
Nay.
Opposed.
And I also vote nay. We'll keep it through the pilot.
But Sheriff, with all due respect, we need a review, probably not much later than January or February. That'll give you a year or a full year's worth of data.
Okay, yeah, we can schedule that for maybe January or February, get the year end numbers and see where we're at. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I recommend some items on the personnel sheet that might be easy to approve? Possibly.
Sure.
It's tab 16. I just need some direction on, and I'm sure some of the department heads would like to know where they stand on their request for new positions. So the first item on there is the Superior Court, and this is the one that was presented in its own session. It doesn't have an impact on 2024, but it was listed as a 2025 item, and if I recollect, y'all are not in favor of that one, or you are in favor of, I think y'all had voted you were not in favor of it, so I need to know for the budget.
Are we looking at a specific tab under 16?
Yes, there should be a
There's a fold out page.
Oh, you
fold
don't-
out page.
So you're looking just across the board, not, okay.
The fold out page. So I can get some clarity on which ones can be approved or not approved. This. The
Superior Court,
Superior Court, sorry, Superior
the
Court.
sixth position judge.
Sixth judge. Or it would impact.
What, Judge,
That's-
Judge,
no,
you had,
That's the Superior District Court, the Superior Court position for a sixth judge.
And administrative deputy.
It was slated for 2025 because you have to have legislative approval first. Right. Right. So I'm just making sure not approved, correct?
I think we should save the 50,000, but
Can you be more specific as to what exactly you're asking?
Okay, so on the spreadsheet, the line item number 1 was for a new position, sixth position judge for starting in 2025.
Okay, I still remain a negative.
Yeah. I don't think that's going to affect this 2-year budget, because if it came back next year, even next year, if judge approached and the decision was different, it wouldn't affect until 26 or 27. So I don't think that at this point in time, that's going to affect this 2-year cycle. Am I wrong on that? I think because there's some lead time, even if in 2025, we changed our mind and said there's still some lead time and avenues they have to jump through. So I don't even think you'd see that expense till after that.
Okay. And so the judge is not approved and neither is the administrative deputy. Correct, because I think that was tied together. Right. Then on the coroner's office, there's a investigator 1 position that was requested. And they've also offered that they would reduce this would allow them to reduce their extra help because they'd have a full-time person. And so that's an impact of $13,962 to the budget.
okay with that.
Approved. Okay. The next one is for drug court, position 5 is new. And that was for I believe this was presented as a shared position. That's why it's called District Court Drug Case Aid. And that position full with all benefits is $80,273.
I would support that provided it's funded from the opioid settlement monies and or CJTA funds.
Okay, I'll do a little more research on that one and bring it back.
Yeah. I'm still a little, it wasn't clear to me, still a little confused on that because it feels like, district court isn't a lot of that work with the cities. And I don't know that the cities are contributing. So I'm a little confused on,
They do when, correct me if I'm wrong, but when they operate on behalf of the cities who bring charges for misdemeanor crimes, they're acting as city municipal court. They're district court judges, but working for the cities. And so there are charges that go, that are charges that the cities pay fees for that service.
so what kind of
And
crimes
so-
are
so the
these,
other thing-
misdemeanors or?
So the other thing is that we also utilize what we call district court for the misdemeanor crimes. So we share the costs with the cities.
So what's the incentive for somebody with what's the penalty on a misdemeanor? Usually it's usually not jail time, right? Yeah. And how often is that? I'm trying to gauge, I get it on a felony why somebody would want to run through drug court because they just can't pay a fine and walk down the road. Yeah. Yeah.
And that is new territory. They haven't had district courts involved as a rule because they don't do the felonies.
Right.
State law last year or 2 years ago broadened the provision to allow district and municipal courts to operate drug courts. But whether they're as effective as the Superior Court model, probably not.
Jury's out on that one for me because I just don't know the incentive behind the misdemeanors to do that.
Okay. I think Molly may have more information.
I don't have a problem with the other position because that was one that was in there and somehow disappeared and
Yeah.
yeah.
And that one also, I can look to see if we can put it on behavioral tax, which it probably was. Did Molly want to add anything there? Or if not,
There she goes.
Hi, can you
Oh,
hear
okay.
me?
Yes.
So, yeah, this request came from meetings with the sheriff and local law enforcement regarding district and municipal court cases. Partially related to the increase in the drug charges, but also just based on the status of the people that law enforcement has been coming in contact with in recent years, especially while there was no drug possession law being enforced. So, I don't want to speak for them, but this was a request that all of those cities have because so many people that we're seeing in district court and the municipal courts are impacted by drug use.
Uh,
Do you want me to still look to see if maybe the opioid funds?
it once again, there's so many programs out there, and I get the incentive for Superior Court for them to want to go through the program, but misdemeanors and stuff, I just having a hard time connecting what would even be the incentive. Why would somebody not just, a lot of times they just get released. I mean, we all see how Olympia's going. They don't do a lot of penalties here, and so I'm real hesitant to start another salary. I don't care where it comes out of, that you're never going to be able to end, and maybe it's just me not making the connect, but I can't see the connection that it would be helpful.
So am I hearing not approved? I guess I'm just not approved.
I'm not in favor. I'm not in favor of it.
Okay. Okay, going to position number
I'm
7.
also not in favor of number 6, but that doesn't probably amount to anything.
Position number 7 was a request from the Office of Public Defender for a new paralegal position. Fully loaded, it's $84,881. Hearing no yes, no's.
I'm okay with that.
I think he felt that this person would be real helpful, and they've been working through a backlog, and his commitment on that would help move that process along. So I think that helps.
So am I hearing approved? Or are we just, I'm just gonna keep you here all day. Next position, number 8, is actually a salary adjustment. It's $5,000. Approved?
I'm okay with that.
Okay, next area is clerk. And this is position 9, 10, 11 are all the same. 9, 10, and 11 are all deputy clerks, new positions. Each one is about $75,000.
I'm okay with that.
I think she took on a lot of the juvenile record stuff.
And then the position number 12 is a new position for office manager at a total of 105. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, no, I wasn't looking.
Stacy, can you tell us about the new office manager?
Sorry, I wasn't prepared to speak today because I thought we already did this. So the office manager position right now currently is the office is run by myself and my chief deputy, Megan Baker. The office and the
Could you speak a
staffing.
little closer and a little more slowly?
Okay.
Toward the end of the
Better?
day, I get obtuse.
The office duties and the staffing levels have gotten to the point where it is, we can't manage it with the Odyssey portal subscriptions that we have. Renewal time is critical and it's crucial. Megan is too overworked. We can't keep up with the tasks. So between the two of us, there's too much to do to continue managing the size of the office that we have.
So in view of the brick wall that the budget shows us, you wouldn't change anything that's on here.
I'm sorry, what?
So I don't, if you need the office manager, you need the office manager. I'm not in a position to be able to judge. I am in a position to say we are seeing a brick wall toward which we're heading. So then my question to you would be, are you sure that you, like, say, do you really need 3 new deputy
At
clerks?
this point in
Could you
time,
get, could you
yes.
get by with 2? And if you say no, well, then
At this point in time, I'm going to say yes, these are definite needs. When I had my budget workshop with you earlier, I did express to you that I have several long-term employees. They're going to be retiring soon.
that's right.
Those positions may not be filled, may or may not. I don't know at this point. We need to get
Appreciate you offering that as a reminder.
and we need to get a grip on the backlog of the juvenile department and the cases that we need to get cleaned up and taken care of. So
Yeah.
there is an abundance of work right now that we need to address.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, treasurer's office. There's one new position for investment banking officer. That is partial, like I said, that one is partially offset by $60,000. It's being transferred in from the investment fund. And then there's 3 other salary adjustments totaling $8,000 approximately.
Would you repeat what you just said about offsetting?
Yes, on the new position for investment and banking officer, there is $60,000 worth of funds being transferred in to the general fund to offset salaries. And that's $60,000 that could offset that 121,000.
That's interest earnings from our investments. Is that where that money comes from?
Once we created our own county investment pool, we collect fees from all of our participants within the pool. And we can charge direct expenses to the pool. So we can charge some of that employee's fees for operating the pool and the cash management and all those to the pool.
Gotcha.
I knew it was connected somehow.
We will still maintain the contract with the investment house.
Yes, the advisors help us with the purchasing, deciding which investments to purchase and the strategy and helping us with that part of it. We still have the management of our investment software and working with the districts and the departments and the cash flows and the managing all of keeping, making sure that the cash is there and tracking all the investments.
How many junior taxing districts do you have in the pool with you?
I had counted all the participants and I can't remember the exact number. It's around 150 different funds that we are tracking in our investment portfolio.
A lot.
I think the question would be before and after the new approach, which has worked out pretty well with your advisor. So because of the advisor, we need a manager. It's much more complex as a consequence.
No, right now I have, what I'm asking is my chief deputy and investment officer is one person. And I asked to separate those out so that, because my investment banking officer is busy all day with daily cash management, investments, working with the districts. I don't have a chief deputy to help me with the rest of the office and all the other duties. And that's what I had asked, is to separate those two positions.
I'm okay with this.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, jumping to sheriff's office. There's one new position, line number 18, for a new position that's a detective position, at a cost of $137,000, basically. And then the second line, 19, is basically an existing position, but it's no longer funded from community long-range planning, and you'll see a negative right below there for 70,000. So it's a net to the general fund of $5,000 on that one. But the detective is a brand new position. And they presented this previously, particularly, I believe, forensic. I remember the discussion was centered around forensics investigations, and the more complex items related to body cams and video footage and things like that. So,
Yeah, that's right.
so do I have an approval?
I'm okay with it.
All right. Okay.
Is there somebody talking?
This would be paid from Law and Justice. Did I hear that? Did I see that right?
Was there a comment? Troy? Yeah. Yeah, and that's true, that Law and Justice could be another source other than general fund. Or it could be a source to move some existing positions that are on general fund over to Law and Justice.
Well, I think we have that forensic, they were talking about the ability to track stuff that we do for ourselves and others that not every county has. I think if I'm remembering right, I was over there, they gave me a little demonstration.
Did we say approved?
Yeah, I remember the conversation. I was good with them.
Oh, okay.
I would like to say on something like this, to me, there are two questions. The first one is it justifiable? And the next one is where it comes from. And if we conflate those two, I think we will tend to make a mistake. In that word, I'm assuming you'll figure out how best to use the
Yeah, so if
resources
you say
have.
approved,
Yeah.
okay, community long-range planning, it's mostly negatives because of the fact that we're moving some things off of there. Purchasing, line item 23, when Public Works looked at changing, they were requesting a change of how they're funding their director, their deputy director, and their finance manager. And they're proposing to change those fund sources to move them to the general fund. And that's a total of about $100,000 for those three line items. Line item 23, 24, and 25.
These aren't new bodies. It's just
No.
changing it
change of source.
The source from, was coming out of building and planning, if I remember
Right.
right. And
Yeah, so that's how we know, we notate it, change of source, not that
Yeah,
it's a new
so it's-
position. And this is when they began to review how they were currently allocated and the change was being made.
Right.
Is that okay? Okay,
Yeah, it's just
okay.
it's not a new expense. It's just,
All right, that's it on positions. Those are the things I absolutely needed today. And then all the technology requests, I think the other ones, those are all on the general fund. The rest of the items on the next pages are on either enterprise funds. I think they're all on enterprise type funds. And they were all change of source. They were not any new positions. And then I think that's all the direction I need as far as items that are not currently in the budget that need to be included in the budget. Are there any other things that you need from me?
So on your big sheet. On your main sheet for tab 16, it shows new salary and benefits total at 890. And the number at the bottom of your
Did it say nine?
second page doesn't say 890.
No, the second page, that was just for general fund.
Yeah,
And that was just general fund. The second page is all enterprise funds.
everything.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And then I will go back on all of these and look for the appropriate source to source the approved items out on.
What's the lottery? What's the Powerball pool up to?
I don't know. Are there any other items that y'all would like me to work on or look at for the budget for 2024, 2025?
you've kind of covered them all.
I think so.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate once again, I think moving forward, we have to be realistic and try and maintain or control our spending. Of course, I'm fairly conservative by nature, so. I guess what I'm saying is we should be happy with the people for quite a while here.
Hold the line. Anything else? That concludes my workshop.
We get to keep our books now?
You get to keep your books.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad
I
thing.
was gonna say,
Anything else, gentlemen? Make sure I got no hand raised, nobody wanting to chime in. Okay, we will adjourn. Thank you.